It was supposed to be another lighthearted afternoon on the Kelly Clarkson Show. The air in the studio buzzed with energy, cameras were rolling, and the audience was ready for laughter. Kelly Clarkson had a reputation for warm interviews, fun, kind, easygoing, and today's guest, comedian Leanne Morgan, was expected to fit right into that vibe. Leanne walked onto the set with her trademark smile and southern charm, waving to the crowd as they cheered. She wore a floral blouse, jeans, and that familiar confidence of a woman who's spent decades making people laugh. Kelly greeted her with open arms, the two exchanging hugs and quick laughs, before taking their seats across from each other. The mood was perfect. Two women, two mothers, two professionals sharing stories about life, motherhood, and the chaos of balancing it all. The audience was hooked from the first joke. Kelly giggled through Leanne's stories about her kids, her husband, and the hilariously unglamorous side of life on tour. It was relatable, it was warm, it was easy. But then the tone began to shift. Kelly leaned forward, her smile softening into something more serious. "You know, Leanne," she began carefully, "a lot of people love your comedy because it's so relatable. But some have said that your material leans pretty heavily on old-school gender roles. You know, wives who can't work the remote, husbands who never help around the house. Do you ever worry that those jokes might feel a little outdated?" The audience went silent. Leanne's expression flickered just for a second, before she let out a polite laugh. "Well, Kelly," she said, "I just talk about my life. That's all I've ever done. I'm not out here trying to make statements about society. I just talk about what's real for me, and for a lot of women like me." Kelly nodded, still smiling, but her tone carried a subtle weight. "I get that. I do. But don't you think comedy has a responsibility to push things forward? To maybe challenge some of those old ideas instead of reinforcing them?" Leanne shifted slightly in her chair, her body language tightening. "I think comedy's job is to be funny," she said. "If I get up there and start giving lectures, that's not comedy anymore. That's a TED Talk, and nobody's paying to hear me do that." The audience laughed, nervously. Kelly smiled again, but there was tension behind it now. "Sure, but you've got such a big platform now," she said. "Your specials are everywhere. You're selling out theaters. People listen to you. Don't you feel like you could use that platform to show a different side of things?" Leanne took a breath, her tone sharpening. "Kelly, when you sing about heartbreak, does anyone tell you to sing about climate change instead? Do they say you should use your platform for something more productive?" Kelly laughed, but it was uneasy. "Well, no, but that's different. Music is about emotion, and comedy isn't?" Leanne shot back. "Because I thought what I do is about emotion, about the absurd, frustrating, wonderful reality of everyday life. I talk about my husband's socks on the floor or not knowing how to use the remote. And women come up to me crying, saying, 'Thank you. You made me feel seen.' That's connection. That's real." The crowd murmured. This was no longer the light-hearted banter they'd expected. Kelly raised her hands, trying to de-escalate. "I'm not attacking you, Leanne. I just think we have to be aware of the messages we send, especially to younger women who might look at your comedy and think that these dynamics are normal or inevitable." Leanne's voice rose slightly. "Kelly, I'm not writing a handbook on marriage. I'm telling jokes. If someone can't tell the difference between comedy and advice, that's not on me. And frankly, I find it a little condescending that you think women are too naive to understand that difference." A soft gasp rippled through the studio audience. Kelly blinked, clearly not expecting that. "That's not what I'm saying." "Isn't it, though?" Leanne pressed. "Because what I'm hearing is that you think my comedy is holding women back, that I'm damaging women by being honest about my life. And what that tells me is that you don't think the lives of women like me are worth talking about unless we fit some progressive checklist." Kelly shook her head. "Leanne, that's not fair." "No," Leanne said, leaning forward. "What's not fair is me sitting here being told that the stories of women like me, mothers, wives, women in small towns, don't count unless we frame them the right way. You're basically saying my life isn't modern enough to joke about." The audience shifted uncomfortably. You could feel the heat in the room. Kelly tried again, softer this time. "I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm just saying that as artists, we can use our voices to move conversations forward, to inspire change." Leanne smiled tightly. Who says I'm not doing that? Maybe by laughing about these frustrations together, women realize they're not alone. Maybe it's not about changing the world overnight. Maybe it's about finding the humor in the chaos. That's its own kind of power. Kelly crossed her arms, sitting back. I hear you. But representation matters. And when you're one of the few women with your level of success, what you choose to talk about carries weight. Of course it carries weight, Leanne said. But representation doesn't mean we all have to tell the same story. Not every female comedian has to talk about politics or empowerment. Some of us talk about laundry and husbands and midlife, because that's real life for millions of women. I didn't create those experiences. I just tell the truth about them. But by not challenging them, Kelly interrupted, don't you think you're normalizing them? Leanne laughed, but it was sharp. So now I'm normalizing bad behavior because I acknowledge it exists? That's absurd. By that logic, every comedian who talks about anxiety is normalizing mental illness. Every comedian who talks about heartbreak is normalizing toxic relationships. Comedy doesn't normalize, it reflects. That's the difference. The room was dead quiet. You could hear the studio lights humming. Kelly's producer stood frozen behind the cameras, unsure whether to cut to commercial. But Kelly didn't stop. I'm just trying to understand, she said carefully. Help me see why you think it's okay to build an act around jokes that some people might interpret as accepting inequality. Leanne's tone hardened. Because that's my life. I've been married over 20 years. My husband's a good man, but he's not perfect. Sometimes he acts like he's never seen a vacuum cleaner before, and that's funny. That's what women laugh about because it's true. I'm not pretending to have the perfect, balanced marriage just to make other people comfortable. Kelly frowned slightly. But don't you see how that honesty, without pushing back, might reinforce the status quo for younger women? Leanne stood up slowly. The audience gasped. Kelly looked up, startled. I'm going to say something to you right now, Leanne said, her voice trembling but firm. You don't get to tell me what my comedy means. You don't get to decide how my audience interprets it. And you sure as hell don't get to lecture me about empowering women when your own songs are full of heartbreak and waiting for love. Should we analyze those lyrics too? Should we talk about how many of them center on men? Kelly flushed. That's completely different. Is it? Leanne asked, her tone cutting. Because you sing about emotions and I talk about them. You express truth through music and I do it through humor. So tell me, what's the difference? Or is it just that you're you and I'm me? Kelly's jaw tightened. You're putting words in my mouth. I don't have to, Leanne said. It's written all over your face. You don't understand women like me. So you question whether our stories are worth telling. You look at me and see someone who represents everything you've outgrown. Domestic life, small-town values, motherhood. But what you don't see is that I'm not a caricature. I'm a real woman telling real stories. Kelly stood up too, now face-to-face with her guest. You're making this personal, Leanne. That's not what this is. It is personal, Leanne shot back. You invited me here under the pretense of a fun chat, then ambushed me with criticism. You don't see me questioning male comedians about whether their jokes reinforce stereotypes. You don't ask them if they're hurting anyone. But you ask me because I'm a woman, because I talk about marriage, because I don't fit the mold. Kelly's voice was tight. That's not true. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation. An honest conversation? Leanne said. Honesty requires good faith. And you didn't come into this with any. You came in with an agenda to challenge me, to make a moment out of me. You wanted to be the one who pushed back against the traditional comedian, but you didn't think I'd push back too, did you? Kelly's eyes glistened slightly. I thought we could talk about the evolution of comedy and representation. I wasn't trying to attack you. Leanne softened slightly, her voice lower but no less firm. You wanted a moment, Kelly, a viral clip. You wanted to look like the voice of progress, challenging the outdated Southern mom comic. But let me tell you something. I've been through too much to let you make me your headline. The studio was dead silent. Kelly swallowed, trying to keep composure. Are you walking off my show? She asked quietly. Leanne laughed, shaking her head. No, honey. I'm staying right here, because I want everyone watching to see what's actually happening. A woman being told that her truth isn't valid unless it checks a box. A woman being told that her humor is less valuable because it comes from a different world than yours. Kelly frowned. Now you're really reaching. Am I? Leanne asked. Because I don't see you? Questioning comics from New York or LA about their material. I don't see you asking them if their jokes about dating apps or therapy are responsible. But I talk about my husband and suddenly I'm a problem? That's not coincidence, Kelly, that's bias. You just don't recognize it because it's dressed up as progress. Kelly's tone was defensive now. It's not about where you're from. Everything's about where you're from, Leanne said. My comedy connects because I'm not pretending to be anyone else. I'm a small-town woman who raised 3 kids, worked at Kmart, and chased a dream late in life. And I'm proud of that. I'm not polished, I'm not Hollywood, but I'm real. And that's why people relate to me. Kelly's jaw set. Nothing about you bothers me. I think you're taking this the wrong way. Then answer me this, Leanne said, stepping closer. Do you think my comedy is harmful to women? Yes or no? Kelly hesitated. I think comedy can reinforce stereotypes if we're not careful. That's not what I asked, Leanne pressed. Do you think my comedy is harmful? Kelly looked torn. I think your comedy comes from a genuine place, and your fans love you. But I also think we all need to consider the consequences of what we put out there. Leanne smiled faintly. So you can't even commit to your own critique. You want to question me, but you don't want to stand by it. You want to play both sides, the friendly host and the moral critic. But you can't be both, Kelly. Kelly's eyes darted toward her producer again. The crew was frozen, not daring to interrupt. The tension was suffocating. Leanne took a breath, her tone softening again, almost reflective. You know, I used to dream about moments like this. Being on national television, being taken seriously, but I never thought it would come like this. Being made to defend my right to joke about my life. The irony is, Kelly, I've spent my whole career giving women a place to laugh at the things that make them feel small or tired or invisible. And right now, you're making me feel exactly that, invisible. Kelly looked down, her expression conflicted. That wasn't my intention. I believe that, Leanne said gently. But intentions don't erase impact. Isn't that what they always say? So maybe now you understand how it feels when someone questions your art in front of millions of people. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The audience sat in stunned silence, waiting to see how it would end. Finally, Kelly nodded, her voice quiet. I respect your honesty, Leanne. I really do. Leanne exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing just a little. And I respect yours, Kelly, but maybe next time we both think twice before deciding what someone else's truth should look like. The audience erupted, some clapping, others unsure whether they were supposed to. Kelly forced a smile, clearly trying to regain composure. We'll be right back after this, she said, her voice slightly shaky. The music swelled, the cameras panned out, and the studio lights dimmed. But the moment had already gone viral before the commercial break even ended. 2 women, 2 worlds, one clash that no one saw coming. And behind the polite smiles and studio applause, one truth rang louder than anything else that day. Sometimes the most uncomfortable conversations are the ones that show us exactly how divided we still are, not by hate, but by how differently we define what it means to be heard.